Hi, and welcome to Elizabeth Ann Reads. Today we're doing part 2 of my 20 in 2020 series, and today is going to be all about rereading books. So it will be the 20 books that I want to reread in 2020. I'm a big rereader. I know some people don't reread, and to each their own. I love rereading. I would be pretty content to just reread books for the rest of my life because I have so many favorites. And I always love discovering new favorites, but I love opening a book knowing that I'm going to love it. Because I already do. So I'm sure I will reread more than 20 books in the coming year, but here are the 20 that are at the top of the list. Starting with The Princess Bride, and hopefully I don't need to explain to you why I want to reread this book. I think I've read it twice, and of course I've seen the movie who knows how many times. If you've seen the movie but have never read the book, you really should read the book. They're both fantastic. This is one of the few books where I think the movie is about as good. But I love this book. I think it's funny. I think it's just full of so many incredible things. Again, just like the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing with your life? But if you have seen the movie and haven't picked up the book, you should do that this year for sure. Another fantasy that I want to reread this year is The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende. I know there are really mixed feelings about this book. I know some people that really hate this book. I love this book. Again, I love the movie too, but they're very different. Unlike The Princess Bride, which is pretty similar, the book and the movie of The Never-Ending Story are very, very, very different. But I enjoy each on their own. But I do love this book. I've read it 2, maybe even 3 times. I can't remember. But yeah, I definitely want to pick this one up again. Also on my list is Momo, also by Michael Ende. I don't have a copy of it, but here's a picture. And this is one I read for the first time just 2 or 3 years ago. And it has to do with the concept of time and the value of time and people coming in and trying to take time away from you. So again, it's kind of an odd fantasy, but it's definitely one I want to revisit this year. Next on the list is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I've only read this one once before, a couple of years ago, but I really, really liked it. It was a great quick read. I just sped right through it in a day or 2 days, and I definitely want to pick it up again this year. The next book has been on my reread list for I think the last 2 years, and I haven't done it yet. And I was going to do it this December, and I think I'm not going to get to it, most likely. So I'm going to put it on the list for next year and make it high priority and get to it, hopefully towards the beginning of the year, and that is S by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. This is a really unique reading experience. It is this library book, but it's full of all kinds of paraphernalia. You've got notes, you've got postcards, you've got pictures, and everything is written on it. So it's kind of a book within a book. You have the book itself, but then you have this whole other storyline going on, you can see, of people's notes in the margins. So it's these 2 people having these conversations about the book in the margins. So it's a story within a story, and it's just a great reading experience, again, with all the little things that are stuck in that kind of elaborate on the story, both the story within the book and the story of what's going on between the 2 people that are reading it. There's these newspaper clippings. Yeah, it's a really interesting reading experience and one that I would like to have again this year. Next on the list is my favorite author, 2 books by my favorite author, and that is Jasper Fforde. This is The Big Over Easy and The Fourth Bear. These are part of a series. The first 2 in the series, well, there's only 2 in the series right now. I'm hoping there will be more someday. And these are basically like a hard-boiled detective novel set in a nursery rhyme world. So you've got this detective who's, investigating Humpty Dumpty or the 3 bears or the 4th bear. And these are the only books by Jasper Fforde that I've only read once. And I really want to revisit them now that I have a greater appreciation than I did when I first started reading Jasper Fforde. I really want to reread these 2 books this year. Next on the list is The Game of Kings by Dorothy Dennett. This is the first in a series, and I'm hopeful that I'll get to more in the series, but I'm only putting the first one on the list. This is historical fiction set in Scotland in the mid-1500s, I believe. Dorothy Dennett writes very dense historical fiction. It's kind of time-consuming to read, at least for me, maybe not for everyone. Kind of takes a while to get through, but just so detailed and so in-depth and just so intriguing, and her plots are just very kind of thickly woven with lots and lots of different strands. And I first read this series, I think, right out of college, so it's been a while, It's been probably a solid 15 years, and I would like to revisit it this year. I would also like to reread The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I'm sure this is, a booktube darling. I'm sure you all know what this is about. I really loved it when I read it. Again, I know some people don't like this book, and I understand why, but I loved it, and I want to read it again. Her writing is so beautiful and just so atmospheric, and I just loved her kind of unique and creative ideas, and I'm looking forward to rereading this one as well. All right, let's jump into some classics that I would like to reread this year. The first is To Kill a Mockingbird. I think I've read this twice before, and I love it, and it's been several years, so I definitely want to reread this one. Also been several years since I read A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I think I read this in high school. I think it was assigned when I was in high school, and I really liked it back then. I've read other Charles Dickens since then, but never revisited this one. And I remember really liking this one and really considering it my favorite Dickens of the ones I've read. And I would definitely like to revisit this and see if that holds up as I've gotten older. Another one is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I just read this last year, 2018, and loved it. It was one of my favorite books of the year. It's pretty short, and I'd like to go back and reread it again. And then the last of the classics I have on the list is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. This is the only book on the list that I think I just read this year. 2019, I read this early this summer. But I loved it so much. I've since read other books by Anne Bronte and just love her so much. So I definitely would like to revisit this again very, very soon. Also on the list is A Middle Grade. It's actually a series. I'm going to include the whole series, even though I'm only counting it as one, because they're really short and really quick to read. The first one is The Case of the Missing Marquis by Nancy Springer. This is the Enola Holmes mystery series. Enola Holmes is the kid sister of Sherlock Holmes. These are such a great, these are so great. A lot of times kids' mysteries, I feel, lack, appeal for adults because they're a little too straightforward and uncomplicated. But I just think these are so good, even as adults. Everyone I've loaned these books to has just loved them and raved about them, and I want to pick them up. I think I've read them all twice, and I am ready for a third time. Also, interesting note, if you're unaware, this first one is actually being made into a movie right now. It's supposed to come out next year in 2020. And it stars, what's her name? Millie Bobby Brown as Enola Holmes. She plays 11 in Stranger Things, if you don't know who that is. And she is playing Enola Holmes. And I think she's such a great fit for this character. And I'm really excited to see that too. So it'll be good to reread the books before the movie comes out. All right, next up is another book I've not read since childhood. And that is Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. This is a book about a boy and his 2 hunting dogs. And it's sad, and if you've seen the movie or read the book, you know that. But I have not read this since I was a teenager, probably, and I would like to reread it. I don't know why I like books about animals, because they're usually sad. But for whatever reason, I want to reread this. Also on the list is Christie by Catherine Marshall. This is historical fiction about a fairly well-off girl who decides to go, she wants to help, and she goes to teach school in the Appalachian Mountains in kind of this backwoods, way off the map community. And obviously that's a huge culture shock for her. This was also made into a TV series back in the 90s, I think, starring Kelly Martin. Also good, but doesn't follow the book super, super close. I think I read this book twice, and again, it's been several years, so I would like to go back and read it again. I would also like to reread Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This was the first Blake Crouch book I ever read. I think I just read it last year, and I've since read several other things, including his new one, Recursion, as well as some of his older works. And I've enjoyed them all, but none as much as Dark Matter. So I would like to go back and revisit that one that originally kind of caught my attention and that I just enjoyed kind of that original storyline so much. I'm ready to read that one again. The last 3 books I have on the list are all by the same author. She's one of my favorite authors. It is Connie Willis. I've talked before about some of her time travel books, which I've read multiple times. But this year I would like to revisit some of her other books. I've read most, probably not all, but most of her other books, but most of them I've only read once, other than her time travel things. So I would like to go back and reread some of her other things, including Passage. This one deals with like near-death experiences. Bellwether, and Lincoln's Dreams. All 3 of those I would like to go back and reread this year. They're all very different, Bellwether's more light and comical. Lincoln's Dreams and Passage are much heavier and heavier topics about, like I said, life after death experience or near-death experiences. Lincoln's Dreams has to do with, I think, dreams and kind of being haunted by the past in dreams. Maybe I can't remember. See, I can't even remember what it's about. So I need to go back and reread all 3 of these books this year because Connie Willis is amazing and I don't appreciate her enough. Also on the list, this is a bonus because I've already hit my 20 books, but this is just I'll probably get to this one too because it's also by Connie Willis. This is Crosstalk. This is her newest book, which is why I've only read it once. It came out, I think, in 2018, or maybe 17. Woo! 2016. Wow, it's been a while. Okay, so I should reread this one too. So this is my bonus 21st book if I get to it. This is a super fun book. If you are not familiar with Connie Willis, I would actually recommend this as a super good starting point. It is like romantic comedy meets sci-fi, and it's fantastic. So that is it, the 2021 books that I would like to reread in 2020. Are you a rereader? What is your favorite book to go back to read over and over and over again? And if you could reread, what are your top 3 that you would like to reread in this coming year? I would love to know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.